will be interviewing an education expert who has worked in Japan to tell us her take on the current problems in the Japanese education system. Now, what is the largest problem you see in Japan today?
Well, the biggest critique of the system is the extreme emphasis on the examinations. The exam period is notoriously known as examination hell. For many students, they see the examination period as the do-or-die scenario, where either you pass the test, get accepted into a top college, become an upper-class elite, and be successful, or you fail the test and receive very little economic opportunities, which to a point could be true in the stratified educational and social structure of Japan. Unfortunately, on average, only 1 out of 8 students pass the test, and there's a ridiculous amount of pressure on the students to be that 1 of the 8. There's so many reports of psychological stress, cheating, and even suicide due to the emphasis of the exams in the society.
Do you see the students having equal access to success in the examinations?
Not at all. The students that are the most disadvantaged going into the exams are the lower class minorities in Kikoku Siju. There's a much more subtle tracking system in the Japanese society than the American system. The lower class have much less resources going to the exams and receive less tutoring opportunities or access to cultural capital. The largest source of cultural capital in Japan is inarguably bilingualism. Bilingualism is a huge asset in the educational world for the Japanese, but is something that is held almost exclusively for the upper class. The lower class and minorities rarely achieve bilingualism. The Kikoku Siju are the returnee students of families who have worked abroad for some time, who return back to Japan and re-enter the education system. These students receive the most amount of stigmatism in schools. Not only are they at an educational disadvantage after being away from the Japanese school system, but they struggle socially and are seen as losing their Japanese common sense.
Do you expect to see reform in the education system in the near future?
Maybe, but it's tough to tell, especially after the recent earthquake and nuclear disaster in Japan. Their priorities may have definitely shifted since then, but if it were to happen in the near future, I see some reform, but wouldn't expect a huge shift in the system. For example, I don't see the examinations going anywhere anytime soon. There is such a push in the culture to be part of the upper class and achieve an elite status, and the only way that many people think that they can achieve this is through the exams. But in terms of equal access for students to be able to achieve success in the examinations themselves, there is room for change. For example, what if bilingualism were available to everyone and alternative ethnic schools were given more funding from the government? Also, if there was more effective re-entry programs for the returnee students, the Kikoku Siju would be at a far less of a disadvantage to the rest of their peers. But ultimately, there has to be more options for students to gain success other than just a good test score. Take, for example, vocational school and technical training. Currently, there is a large stigma held against vocational schools. But what if technical training were more widely accepted? After all, not every student can excel from a general education. There has to be options for those who simply can't do as well in the standard general educational structure. In this aspect, the Japanese education system can appear limited. Some even critique the system for not having enough creativity and individualism in the schools. This is a large Western idea, but just because it's Western doesn't mean that it's any better. And the same goes for the Japanese school system. The grass isn't always green on the other side, and that's something students, teachers, administrators, and government officials really must keep in mind when looking at the two systems.